Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bankroll Burners, the podcast for poker players who can't stop getting them bad. I'm Mike,
And I'm Josh.
and we are here as always, bringing you some poker hands we played recently, reviewing them with each other, getting some live blind reactions, and just laughing at our own incompetence.
You know, it's always more fun when you could laugh at yourselves, and it's a good time, and I hope you enjoy laughing at us or with us, whichever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, I always know that as soon as I leave the table, all my opponents burst out laughing as I walk away with my empty chip rack.
It's
So
weird.
might as well just,
Yeah, I mean it's weird, right? It's like everyone at the poker room wants to play with me. Like I'm just the most popular guy. When I get up, everyone starts like getting ready to go. Like I didn't know I brought that much life and fun to a table.
you're just a great guy, Josh, and everyone knows that. So,
Yeah, that must be it.
well, cool. I'm excited. I'll kick things off if you don't mind. I've got a real doozy. This is a hand that I it's been a couple of weeks now, maybe even a month, and I, for the life of me, still could not tell you what the hell I was doing in this hand. So
Excellent. Hey, you know what? Yeah, I hope that we get some true we played too well last episode is the problem.
absolutely,
So
yeah.
we gotta bring things crashing back to reality.
Yeah, so I'm excited for this one. This is from a 2-2 session at Best Bet Jacksonville. Uh, that's a $300 cap game. The effective stack in this hand is going to be 350.
Wow, way to
And
brag that you've run your stack up.
I think I was stuck quite a bit at this point. Um, yeah, and we're sitting in the low jack with 8-9 of diamonds.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so not my favorite. It's kind of the worst suited connector is how it's often described. 8-9 suited, which is funny because it's the highest one, but actually second highest, 10-9 being a higher suited connector. But
Boy, we're starting off good here.
yeah, but the reason it's considered to be the worst is because of the reverse implied odds it has with Ace King, where if you make a straight with Queen Jack 10 and somebody has Ace King, you are going to very likely get stacked. However, that's mostly relevant when you are calling a raise, or maybe three betting an early position raise yourself or something like that. Like if we don't get raised here, we don't necessarily have to worry about that. And indeed, we do not get raised. Instead, we get called by button and big blind.
So we opened here, and no limpers. It just folds to us, and we open.
Most to
And
us,
what's your open
10.
size?
Straight 10. Yep.
Opens to 10. We get called by the button and the small blind.
Big blind.
Okay, so stuck in the middle once again, a real Bankroll Burners classic, getting called by multiple people. And yeah, I mean it's interesting, right? Because the sort of upside of 9-8, as you've sort of described it, is that when you're playing a single raise pot and you're the aggressor, it's unlikely that you're going to run into too many of those reverse implied odds. Obviously you can still run into King 9. But, if we had like 7-8 and flop the bottom end of the straight, then we could definitely be up against still be up against King Queen,
Sure.
if in a single raise pot. So here it's a little bit less likely, in these sort of pots to actually do that. And obviously it does have a little bit better like high card power than 7-8, where you might actually like flop top pair and be good and like have it still be top pair by the river, which is obviously this is going to be a groundbreaking concept. That's less likely the lower the cards in your hand are.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that sort of bit of insight. So,
Well, that's a little generous.
yeah, so it's not a bad spot. I mean, I hate being in the middle on a multi-way pot. It sucks, but what are you gonna do? The flop comes what I would describe as a pretty nice one. It's 8 of hearts, 5 of hearts, deuce of spades.
8 of hearts, 5 of hearts, deuce of spades. So nice. We've got top pair on a pretty connected board. Somewhat connected board.
Somewhat connected board. We don't have a backdoor flush draw. We do have a backdoor straight draw, although it would be a pretty crappy straight if we hit it.
Yep.
So, um, So we're mostly just looking at our hand as a top pair sort of hand that maybe needs some protection. So when it checks to me, I do go ahead and bet $15. What do you think about that?
Yep, I like betting here for sure. I like betting with a hand like this more than I like betting with some overpairs, because this hand does need a lot of protection. We can get a lot of value from all sorts of draws, but also a lot of draws containing overcards that just have a lot of equity against us, and that we can start getting value from at this point while we're likely ahead. It's tough to be beat here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if we had something like aces, are we looking to check raise here, or are we just going to go ahead and bet it? What do you think?
Probably either is fine. If we
Mhm.
want to protect our checking range somewhat, aces is a good hand to do it. Especially like if we have a heart, checking aces is probably good, like really good.
Sure.
Or
That
kings
makes
with a
sense.
heart, probably pretty good. Obviously, other overpairs, like jacks and tens and so on, probably want to do a more betting for similar reasons, to try to get value from worse hands that have a little bit more equity from overcards. Also, of course, not just protection, but also harder to get value on later streets with a hand like 8-9, where if a king rolls off, it's going to be tough to keep getting value from worse hands.
That's very true. One thing I do think is interesting is in multi-way theory goes that you're supposed to use a fairly polarized betting range. Obviously, there are some boards where that's more true than others. This is probably one where we don't have to be quite as polarized because it's not that connected
Mm-hmm.
type of board. So I do wonder but we are somewhat deep as well. So it's I mean we're at an almost, what's the SPR here? It's like 7 or so.
It's like
Um,
10 before we bet, right?
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously, yes, we do want to be polar somewhat, but I do think this is a pretty good betting candidate. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just interesting because you're always, when you're out of position and deep, like being out of position, being deep, and being multi-way are all things that make you want to really not play large pots.
Right.
So it's interesting if we think about a hand like 8-9, like we are never betting this hand for 3 streets
Right.
unless of course if a 9 rolls off we probably can, but or we make trips or something, if but we're never betting just like an 8 for 3 streets here. So it's just kind of interesting to think about, like maybe we don't, maybe we play this more passively. Maybe we're supposed to check call here. Maybe we're supposed to do very little betting with anything other than like hands we'd be comfortable stacking off with. It's sort of interesting. I don't know.
Well,
What do you think?
I think that's fine, and to some extent, but I also think in live poker, let's also feel free to deviate from theory, and this is in a spot like this, a multi-way spot where you have 2 callers pre-flop. Chances are they're going to be more on the passive side, and we're just going to be able to get a lot of value by betting from draws and all that they may not be bluffing with. If the button has a hand, even if the button has a hand 10-9 of hearts or something, and probably should start betting with it if check 2, many live players will not bet at the frequency they should. And so getting the value ourselves is just something we do have to do more often.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to get value from all sorts of draws on the flop in live poker. So,
Yeah.
It's possible, like maybe in theory, this hand's not supposed to be bad, but we can deviate and say, well, I think this is a good betting candidate. So,
Well, so what happens with this bet?
2 calls.
Okay, so
Which,
I'm feeling somewhat worse about our hands.
yeah, I mean, we can still have the best hand here a lot.
Absolutely.
I think actually we still have the best hand here more often than not. I think we can.
There are a lot of draws, for sure. There are not a lot of turns, I want to say.
Yes, absolutely. I would say there's a lot of draws, and there are a lot of under pairs too.
Yep.
7s, 4s, 3s, all may call. So, I don't feel too bad about this. Obviously, I would have preferred a single call, but what are you gonna do? The turn comes the King of Hearts.
Okay. Pretty bad card.
I'd say so.
Heart draw, front door heart draw gets there, and if we were getting floated by some King X, which is somewhat unlikely, but
I think it's fairly unlikely anybody has a king here. I don't really know what kings there are.
I guess King 5 suited and King 8 suited, but we were losing to King 8 suited anyway.
Yeah, we were already behind that hand. Yeah, I don't know. I think this card, if not for the fact that it was a heart, would be fairly bricky.
Yes, although again, it's probably going to be difficult to get value from a hand like pocket sevens on this card, whereas we probably could if like the turn was like an offsuit deuce.
Oh yeah, that's a good point as well. So anyway, big blind checks, and what do you want to do in our spot?
I think I just want to check. Get to showdown. I don't think we're going to be getting a whole lot of value here, and this is a pretty crappy card. So pretty happy to check here.
I agree wholeheartedly, which explains why I bet $50.
Wow, sizing up.
I know.
And I don't even really like your size that much because I think when on such a dynamic and not changing card, we probably want. I don't know if we want to be betting huge, and especially not multi-way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we had a king here, if we had a king here, let's say we had like king queen with a backdoor, and we were barreling flop. We bet flop,
Sure.
And we run into a king here. We kind of unblock the top pair type of hands, and I think we'd want, but those previous top pair hands, those 8x, have now been downgraded to a medium strength hand, which those are the sorts of hands you want to put in a tough spot by betting large.
Right.
It's not like it's a situation where, for example, although again the flush came in. That's the thing. If the fact that the flush came in makes that a little bit worse, and is why I think had the flush not come in, if I had a king, I would probably take this larger sizing. But given that the flush came in,
and we don't have a king,
I think this is just a pure check. So I really don't know. I don't know what was going on here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm still sort of people say the turn is the hardest street, and it is. It does, it's like very difficult to figure out your sizing when like a flush completing overcard comes in and like you're like, what do I have? And like, what does my range want to do? And it's kind of a weird spot where it's like, when a king comes in that also completes the flush after getting 2 callers on the flop, would we even want to bet a king always?
Probably not.
Right. So
I think this is possibly just a spot where we're going to check.
So we're turning our 8 into a bluff.
Right, which is a terrible bluffing candidate.
Yeah, right.
We block the hands that may fold.
Yeah.
So and we don't unblock really any draws except for maybe like 9-7. So yeah, I think truly just an unbelievably horrendous play for me.
We can still, and I mean, there are some hands we can get value from, like maybe now if there's like pocket sevens with a heart, if there's like ace 5 with the ace of hearts, and that's pretty much it. 7-8 maybe.
Yeah,
that's what I've got.
All right, so but wait, this isn't the worst part of the. I mean,
well, what do the next two players do?
Right, so the button then min clicks me to 100.
Okay.
And the big blind folds.
Okay.
So immediately I was like, I hate myself.
Right.
For like doing this, and now I'm getting this just like ridiculous price.
Yeah. But like, what does he have that called the flop and is now bluffing?
Like, I don't know, like ace 3 with a ace of hearts is the only thing I like. Maybe ace 4 with the ace of hearts that called with a gutter on the flop.
I think that's fair. There's maybe a few hands, but like we are at the stone bottom of our betting range.
Right, if we have a betting range at all, it's like
right.
Yeah,
and I think we probably can have a betting range because like the king is good for us, and like we can definitely have a lot of heart draws, so we probably can do some betting here, but this hand is likely among the worst candidates. Like, even our bluffs, chances are a lot of the bluffs we have here are going to have a lot of equity in the form of a high heart. And so I'd be more inclined to call given the great price with a hand like that, And I think, by the way, especially in live poker, if you have a hand like, if you yourself have a hand like ace X with the ace of hearts here, I think you can definitely call and lead rivers when the flush completes, because you're just going to get so much value from like turned flushes. I think that's kind of a good live deviation because like people will just not be folding their like turned flushes enough because they won't believe you.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think that I should fold this hand.
I think it's fine to fold. I don't mean if you call, like if it goes check check on the river, do we win sometimes?
Occasionally.
Sometimes. And I think that, and I mean those types of hands that you described, ace 3, ace 4, with the ace of hearts, certainly might check back the river when they miss.
Yep. So you're saying that this calling here isn't completely atrocious?
I don't think it can be that atrocious because we have to call 50 to win 225, so we're getting like 5.5 to 1.
4.5.
4.5 to 1. We only need to be good. Like, well, yeah, I think it's probably still bad.
Yeah, I mean, we need to be good here like 17% of the time or whatever.
Yeah,
like
I doubt it. And we're out of position, so it's like even worse. It's like even harder to actually realize that equity.
Right. We don't have to be good here 70% of the time. We have to be good and it goes check check.
Right. We have to win like that amount of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan, but it sounds like you called.
Yeah, we called.
Okay.
The river.
And it's worth noting, by the way, now the SPR is under 1, right? There's about 275 in the pot, and we've got like 225 behind.
That's right. With
this hand that you said you don't want to play for stacks with?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, just truly an absolute disaster. I mean,
okay, just check.
This is a note. I'm not defending myself.
Yeah. No, I just making sure that just make sure our listeners understand, and I'm sure you'll get your chance to get me back.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say to our listeners, like, we're never defending ourselves. Like, trust, we know.
Right. All right. So, how's the river looking?
The river comes with Jack of Diamonds.
Okay.
So, it's at this point, so the final board, of course, is now 8 of Hearts, 5 of Hearts, Deuce of Spades, King of Hearts, Jack of Diamonds. And I do contemplate turning my hand into a bluff here.
And, like, leading?
Yeah, I contemplated it.
Yeah. I just don't... It's interesting, right? Because I feel like a lot of our turned strong hands, we could probably have a 3-betting range on the turn when our opponent min-clicks us. So I just don't think... Right? So I don't think we have that many hands. I don't think we really have any hands that we'd want to do this. Even though I said, I'd probably rather just take Ace of Hearts hands and just rip it on him on the turn.
Yeah, I really think that I don't think we have any credible leads here, so I didn't lead. I just, it crossed my mind.
Sure.
Didn't do it. Checked. It does go check, check.
Okay.
And we lose to King 10 of Spades.
Okay. Well, it could have been worse. He could have value bet the river and we could have called.
That's true. That could have happened.
So it's interesting. I think I don't hate the flop bet for sure. I think the only street that maybe, that was a blunder would be the turn. And I think, it's pretty...
It's 2 blunders, though. So
there were 2 blunders, but it was 1 street, so it really that only counts as 1.
Yep. So anyway, atrociously played hand by myself,
and I'm glad it went check check on them. I guess it doesn't really matter, but I wonder if he would have folded if we led the river.
He definitely checked back very quickly. I don't think he liked the river. Not that I think that makes that much sense.
No, it changes nothing, right?
Right. So I had like specifically pocket jacks, I guess,
or Jack 8 suited.
Sure. But yeah, so anyway, I don't know. This is why this is why people love to play poker with me.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Okay, well I think that's a good hand. All right, I have got one here from a 1-3 game in which we are quite deep. We start this hand about 900 effective in 1-3, no straddle. This is from I think the same table I was talking about last week. I think both my hands are actually. Pretty fun table, lots of recreational players just kind of having a good time, enjoying the return to 1-3. And in this hand, we are going to have it fold to us, and we look down in the cutoff at Ace of Spades, Ace of Hearts. So I raise it up to 20, and this is a table where I've been raising to 20 with some frequency, given how deep we were. I've been trying to raise to 20 more when I remembered to. And it's just, we're deeper. It's 20. People were calling like any size, so I was like, well, I guess I should start raising bigger.
Yeah, fair enough. You go a straight 6.5x open, and what happens?
Well, the button folds and both blinds call.
That's awesome. You're out in position to two people in a bloated pot with pocket aces and deep.
And right, and I was no, oh no, I lost it. I don't even know. Oh, you know what? I was starting to feel when it folded to me in the cutoff, and I looked down at aces. I was like, oh man, like it folds. The one time it folds all the way to me, when I have aces, because of course. But I did get some action, so can't complain.
Yeah.
And
it's going to go great for you. So
the flop is going to come a little bit sketchy. It's queen of clubs, jack of clubs, eight of hearts, and it checks to me. And I decided to check this one back.
Yeah, queen of clubs, jack of clubs, eight of hearts. You do not have a club.
Correct.
I mean, if this were heads up, would you bet this board?
I don't know.
I think you have to, if you're heads up.
Sure.
Because, like, you are still pretty close to the top of your range.
That's true.
I think that you are going to have more two pair on this board than he. Well, I guess he could probably. Actually, no, he should have more two pair than you. I'm sorry. But you should have more sets.
Well, and it depends, right? It's a very weird should, because, it's like a 6.5. As you said, it's like a 6.5x raise pre-flop. Theoretically, my raising range, and, if you ever tried to put this hand into a solver, it would laugh at you, because it's just how do you assign pre-flop ranges when you've raised to 6.5x and get two callers?
Right, yeah. I'm not thinking from, like, a solver-y perspective, I guess. But that doesn't mean we can't just still, analyze range advantage.
Absolutely. Yes, I think it's more likely that the big blind would defend there with something like queen 8 suited, jack 8 suited. I might raise. I mean, I don't know. I'd probably raise in queen 8 and jack 8 suited at some frequency from the cutoff. Queen 8 suited probably 100%. Jack 8 suited some amount.
Yeah, and I mean, big blind can't have those hands off suited though.
That's true.
I would say still though, even like aces, kings, queens, jacks, those are hands you have. Big blind is going to have a ton of pair plus flush draw, pair plus straight draw type hands, or pair plus flush draw type hands.
Sure.
So I actually think that you shouldn't bet this hand with your range, but I do think that you should bet this hand with your strong hands. Sorry, bet this board with your strong hands for a large sizing. And I do think aces is one of those hands, especially because you're in position, so if you get some uncomfortable turn cards, you can always check back.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. I think, at least from a heads up perspective. What about multi-way? Do you still think we should be betting this?
Well, I think. Well, first of all, let's think in theory. Your opponents don't have to just first we'll go in theory, and then we'll talk about live exploit. But in theory, your opponents don't have to defend this board as wide. So if you were gonna bet it, you would take a smaller sizing.
Of course.
There are more hands out there to get value from in a multi-way scenario. I don't think that small blind also really has a ton of two pair here. I think is worth noting.
You never know, right? Like people kind of treat the small blind like the big blind a lot in these but I guess if we're talking theory, yes, I think you're right.
Well,
the small,
even in actuality, I think small blind will have less hands like Jack 8 offsuit, for example.
Right. That's true.
So, I think small blind actually probably has a very condensed range, very like the value hands. Like small blind could have like Queen X sometimes, Jack, again, kind of pair plus straight draw type of hands. And I think for those reasons, I do still like a bet here in multi-way. And then when we think about live exploit, where they're just not going to be check raising you that much, I even like it unless they have some really nutted hand like 10-9 or Queen Jack. I think they will check raise those hands. And you could fold certainly if that happens. But I do still like a bet here, even multi-way. I think you will get called. I think if you get called in two spots, you can still have a ton of equity. Yeah,
and as you said, I can always check back turn, so it's probably fine. I think it is probably good to bet here. I would definitely, and it is interesting to think about heads up. I'd definitely like to. This is something I should have, at least checked a solver just to see, if it were a heads up pot where you raised to sort of a normal sizing and were called, what does sort of, your betting range look like on this board? Because in position, it's probably pretty rare that you have like range checks or super super polarized bets. So
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think this board is that bad for you. I like you can have a ton of nutted hands on this board, inclusive of the nuts. You can have the straight.
that's true.
I like a large bet on this board, not an over bet certainly.
I'd probably go
like,
half pot multi-way.
Yeah, I think you would probably take like something like a 75% or 2/3 sizing heads up multi-way. You could take a half pot sizing. It's probably a little more comfortable anyway. So okay, but you check.
Yep, and I think it's totally fair to bet. Probably makes the most sense just to start getting value with our strong hands. And I definitely would be betting, my best hands on like my best draws. But I don't think this is a range check by any means. I kind of decided, we're super deep. I'm gonna, exercise a little pot control here, and we'll probably we'll just have to realize that I'm near the top of my range on future streets. That's kind of the downside here is, of course, if the action goes crazy on future streets, we're going to be a little bit more incentivized to call down.
Which is not great when deep.
Right. So maybe even another reason to bet. So anyway.
Here's a question, though. If you go half pot and you get like small blind call, big blind raise, what are you going to do? Are you folding?
Probably call one straight. I think you have to call once.
Yeah. It's interesting. It seems pretty nutted though. I
think if like small blind raised and big blind called, then you could definitely.
Oh, that's a snap muck for sure.
Yeah,
but you're never
deep.
Good there. But,
this deep, certainly.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Like,
well, this hand goes kind of off the rails, and it's a little. And I don't think I'm not really sure. I've faced some weird decisions, including this one that I was just not sure that I did right, and I do think a bet kind of makes more sense. And maybe if there's a bet, if I bet and then there's a call and a raise, maybe I can just lay it down. But at worst, I can call the raise, and then like if the small blind also calls, just like snap fold turns.
Right.
Depending on sizing.
It's definitely interesting. So okay, yeah, but you.
So the turn comes the 4 of diamonds. It's a total brick, as big a brick as you can ask for. Now the small blind leads for 15.
15.
And the big blind raises to 35. Which is like not a real raise. And I really did not know what to do here. Because I feel like 3-betting here is too strong. Like, I don't think this is a hand that I want to, like, 3-bet.
So you would, if you had, like, 10-9, if you had the nuts, you would 3-bet here. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think to these sort of min-clicky raises, it's probably okay to do some, maybe it's okay to do some 3-betting. It's kind of like I was talking about last hand with your, like, ace of heart, if you had a hand, you could probably do some 3-betting on that turn, seeing like a min click,
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know. Maybe I can just call with like 10-9 too, and just keep everyone in.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously you want to get stacks in with a hand like 10-9.
Right, or pocket queens, or pocket jacks, or probably even pocket eights.
Right. So you're trying to get stacks in. So you want to raise. You want to accomplish that. If you call here, how much are you guys gonna have left?
We're gonna have like 850 left. If I were to call and then small blind called, there'd be like 175 in the pot and like 850 behind. So
like very much so not in stacks territory.
Correct.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. If you call here and small blind raises,
then we probably fold.
You probably just fold there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I think that first of all, I think small blind's play is not strong. Betting 15 into $60, I think, is a sizing tell. Like, I just can't see it like a rationale why someone would take that unless they were take that kind of sizing unless they were very uncomfortable with their hand.
Right.
Big blind's raise also strikes me as like pretty weak. I do think it's possible. I think big blind's raise is fairly polarizing, actually. I think you can have a lot of trash that's like he's trying to see where he's at, like
right.
with a queen or something. And then the other thing, he could have like some sort of super nuts, and he's trying to entice you to do something.
Right.
So
But I do think too, like, if I call here and I feel like I guess I felt like in the moment calling here kind of put me in a pretty good position where like I'm in position, right? If I call here and small blind calls and we see a river and like there's more crazy action on the river, I can fold. If it checks to me, I can either like put out a small value bet or check back depending on what the river is. And obviously if small blind like 3-bets here, I can probably, I can pretty happily fold because I don't think there, as you've pointed out to me, I don't think there's many people who are 3-bet bluffing live.
yeah. I do think it's worth pointing out though on the river. So like, let's say you call and small blind calls. Let's just say,
Sure.
and then the river rolls off. I mean, if the river bricks out, and small blind checks, and then big blind bets rather large, what are you going to do?
Right. That is pretty tough. I mean, I don't know. I might just call. Like again, I think we're so close. Like we're pretty high up in our range after checking back flop. And like when we check back flop, I do think like, big blind could be making this play with a hand like king queen, and just think he's good.
I guess my question is, do you think that like king queen would bet big on the river?
Right. In a brick with a brick, maybe. I don't know.
I think no.
So you think
I don't know, but I think it's close. Like I actually
Right.
think it's a pretty uncomfortable river spot for you. Versus if you were to raise now and it went like call, which would suck. But it could sometimes go check on the river and you win.
I don't
Raise,
know about
you're
that.
likely to lead.
I don't know. I think if we 3-bet here and get 2 calls, I don't think we're ever good.
You still don't think they can both have like big blind has a queen and small blind has some type of drawing hand?
Maybe. I don't think small blind would be calling draws like.
Yeah, I guess if it goes call, you're probably in a bad spot. But if it goes like small blind fold, big blind call,
Then we can probably win, right? But if small blind, even if small blind calls and big blind folds, I still don't think we're good very often. Because like betting and then calling the 3-bet, I think is just from the small blind, like out of position to both players. I think is pretty. You have to be pretty strong to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that. I mean, you want to take advantage of a position in the best way possible here. So it's like, do you want to just call and then just like evaluate rivers, or do you want to try to take control of like freeze the action with your raise? Which I think if you were against a sort of a tough opponent, you wouldn't want to do that. But I suspect that's not the situation here, given the action. So
see, that's interesting because I feel like against a tough opponent, I'd be more incentivized to like 3-bet here because I'd like. That way, like, it does kind of give me, rebuy the button, sort of, and if we get 4-bet, like,
I think a tough opponent will understand what you're trying to do and may have a good amount of river leads.
Right. I mean, but that's okay. I think that's okay too because, like, the action is just like in our theoretical world, right? The action is getting so crazy that like aces kind of becomes like a pretty bad hand, like one pair is just kind of bad. And so like we can probably fold it to some river leads.
That's true.
So it's one of these things where against a tough opponent I'd be more inclined to raise here and evaluate versus like against kind of bad players who might check on the river too. Anyway, this is making me realize that I've really played this hand poorly. All along.
I think just calling here it's going to put you in a lot of uncomfortable river spots. I think I would probably be inclined to raise for value here. I think that both players can have worse hands than you, and I think you are likely to get called by one worse hand here if you raise, and then I think the river can go check a lot. I think if big blind has some type of draw, he will call a raise, and then versus if you call here, if you just call, I think the river. Also, like if the river is not a brick, it's going to create some uncomfortable situations as well if big blind bets again. So
I don't really think the thing is I don't think those are actually uncomfortable situations because I think if the river is like the 9 of clubs, it's just like a super 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 easy muck.
That's true.
You know what I mean? So, like I think if we call here and the river, and maybe that is also a good reason to raise because there are so many bad rivers and we want to like get value and just try and rebuy the button. So
Yeah, I kind of like a raise. I'm not totally sure it's right, but I kind of do like a raise here. I think calling is just like it's gonna suck, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It can't be that bad. Maybe or maybe it can. I don't know. What did you do?
I called.
Okay. Small
And
blind?
then the small blind called as well. So our theoreticals are starting to come to life. And again, there's about 165 in the pot. There's around 850 behind, so we're still not really close to playing for stacks. And the river, I think, is where things really go wrong. Really, we can talk about flop and turn, but I think river, I super butchered. The river comes the queen of spades. And it checks to me.
Seems like a pretty easy check back.
Yeah, you would think, wouldn't you?
I mean, it's unlikely big blind has a queen with this action, so big blind probably has a bricked draw.
Right.
Is the most likely thing big blind has. Small blind either has a queen or nothing, or also a bricked draw, which
Right.
you think that betting is we can only get called by better.
Right.
So,
so I bet.
All right. Sounds good.
So I bet 55, which is about a third.
So interesting. Obviously, or not obviously, but to our viewers, apparently the solver says that you are never supposed, if you are betting on the river in position, you are never supposed to bet less than half pot. Maybe you never say never, but almost never supposed to bet less than half pot on the river. However, a common deviation in live poker is because live villains don't check raise us enough at the low stakes, we can bet smaller than half pot on the river to try to get crying calls from hands that have no business being in there. This doesn't strike me as one of those situations.
I was kind of thinking, like, what I'm really, what in game, right? I'm also not defending this because I agree this is pretty easy check back. But I was basically thinking, like, obviously, like, yes, there are some queens that villains can have, but not, obviously the queen coming out makes it a little bit less likely. There's no, like, queen X of clubs, there's no, like, pair and a flush draw, and maybe we can still get value with a small bet from a hand like Jack 10 or Jack 9. Or like Jack 8, like kind of one of these Jack hands that was strong at one point and now is no longer strong. I don't know that means that it's worth betting here, but that was and it probably doesn't because I do think that there are still a ton of queens that my opponents can have.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of interesting. It's like, can we get called by a Jack for this sizing? I mean, I think if it was heads up, like probably, but multi-way, like that means the big blind has to have a Jack because small blind is not.
And big blind could have Jack 8 here, I guess. I'd say that's probably the only Jack that he has when he like raises, unless he's just like really brain fart min clicked with like Jack 10 or Jack 9.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's horrible. I don't think it's horrible. I don't think it's great, though. I think I would check here.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think checking here is probably right. And I immediately get punished as small blind bumps it to 200 and big blind folds.
I assume we put our hand in the muck.
And we put our hand in the muck. And he shows pocket jacks.
Ooh.
So I was like, well, fair enough. So yeah, I don't know. I think I should have checked back river. But I just thought the flop and turn were pretty interesting. Like I still don't really know what I'm supposed to do on the turn. But I guess maybe if we bet the flop, we'd kind of have a clearer sense, to be fair. So
yeah, that's true. I think it's also interesting, like if you had 3-bet the turn in small blind, and it goes call, to your point, like you're probably never good.
Yeah,
so,
like we just give up.
But if we just get called in one spot, we could still be good. So it's interesting. It's a combo bet.
But I also think either way, if in the specific river, if we 3-bet the turn, small blind called, big blind folded, right? And the river rolls off a queen, I do think it would still be a snap check back. Because it's like he's either I don't think we have any hands that he's calling with. So when you think about it that way, it makes this bet even worse.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, it makes no sense to bet river here.
Well, I'm glad that we're back to the classic Bankroll Burners experience after last week's momentary lapse of reason, momentary lapse of stupidity, I guess.
If you enjoy the classic Bankroll Burners experience, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing to this video. It helps us out a lot. And yeah,
Yeah,
you
feel
should do
free
it.
to tell us what you how feel free to just rag on us. We feel too good about ourselves. Sometimes we're just too confident.
Yeah, every day that I walk into a poker room is a day I'm too confident. So,
I'll get them
um,
this time. All right. Well, let's keep things moving. I hope you have another dandy for us.
yeah, this is a hand. At the time, after I played it, I was like, oh, this is such a good podcast hand because I'm like so uncertain about like what
Oh,
I should have done.
nice.
So this is I don't know that I played this one horribly or not. I'm not really sure, to tell you the truth. Like I'm really not sure. So I'm excited to
Okay.
hear what you think. So this is from the 3-5 meetup game that Brad, Owen, and Andrew Nemi hosted here in Jacksonville this week. Andrew Nemi was at my table for a little while. Super awesome dude, super nice, chill guy. So shout out, thank you so much for stopping by in Jacksonville, you guys.
As if they're watching Bankroll Burners.
Yeah, absolutely. We know they're big fans of the show. So anyway, that was awesome. But this is not a hand involving either of them. This is a hand involving a button. The button in this hand, who is the villain, is someone I would describe as a semi-professional. He's been playing poker for many years. He's a 5'10" reg at in local rooms here in Jacksonville. Very, very nice dude. I've only played with him a couple times. He is a very skilled player.
And what's the effective stack in this hand?
So we're 900 effective, so almost 200 big blinds.
Okay, nice.
And this hand starts with the villain opening the button, folding to him in the button, and we defend our big blind with what I would say is a pretty loose defend, but probably right, is King of Clubs, 7 of Spades.
And what is button open to?
20.
Hero calls and BB with King Club 7 of Spades. Yeah, I think it's okay. I think it's fine to fold to like 4x. Because again, I know we've talked about this before, and I probably also these types of hands I probably would rather just fold, just because there is rake, it is a larger open than theoretical. So a lot of I'm sure if you're listening to us, you've probably exhausted the rest of the poker content on the web, so you're aware of pre-flop charts that basically show the big blind just defending this massive range from the button open. And it's important to remember that those are sort of designed with a 3 big blind open in mind, and are often also designed as sort of tournament hands where there's no rake, and there may also be an ante kind of further incentivizing calls. That said, I'm sure, calling with a king can't be bad.
Yeah, and I will say I felt pretty good about this call because I was in this exact same setup earlier in the day, and I folded King 7 offsuit, so I was like, I'll defend it this time. So
Perfect. Mixing.
we are mixing, baby.
Okay, so cool. So we call, and it's obviously we're gonna run into some uncomfortable situations, and especially super deep. Maybe we kind of shift our calling more towards suited hands, but
I wouldn't say we're super deep though.
Yeah, it's true. That's a good point.
Anyway, so the flop comes out a pretty interesting one. It's a Jack of Clubs, 8 of Clubs, 5 of Spades. So we have
backdoor galore.
We have 1 over, a backdoor second nut flush draw, and several backdoor straight draws.
Okay.
So I like this board, actually.
Okay.
And I check.
Yeah.
I think we can lead here sometimes. I don't know if this hand necessarily would lead, because I think this hand, if we were going to take a very aggressive route on the flop, I think this hand plays better as a check raise, because I think villain will still bet this board a decent amount.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say is I just don't think we have enough strong strong leading hands here. I think that villain can on this particular board. I think if we lead, we can just get super exploited by a super super heavy check raise frequency from our opponent. Because we really do not have a lot of strong hand. Sorry, normal raise.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like we have some we do have 2 pairs. But it's
we have all the 2 pairs. We have Jack 5 suited, Jack 8 suited, 8 5 suited.
Yeah.
Jack 8 off somewhat.
I would just rather have I'd rather develop a leading range on a board that's a little bit more favorable for our range.
I agree. I think ultimately it's not super critical to have a leading range on this board, and I didn't.
Yep.
I checked, and here's the first real inflection point of the hand. Villain on the button bets $25.
Okay.
And we have an option here between a check raise or a check call. What do you like?
I think I'd rather check call here against this sizing. I think if he bet like 15, like 10 or 15, and we want to be check raising more, and I think that's when I'd start really incorporating a lot of this these junk double backdoor hands. Even if we did want to raise with double backdoor hands to this size, which we might want to do some, I would probably want to hold the ace of clubs to be doing that. Just because this is a bit of a bigger sizing. That's probably how I would think about it.
Yeah. I agree. I think that I think one thing that I learned recently is you're actually supposed to do a lot of check raising of second pair for value as big blind versus button versus a smaller size.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and that means we really need to have a lot of check raise bluffs. So
definitely, yeah, I would be happy to check raise this for sure against a small size.
Yeah, but I think against the size that Villain took here, I agree that it's better to place this check call with intentions of doing some either leading turn or check raising turn or turning aggressive later in the hand.
Definitely, yes. If we call here and continue to play passively on future streets, then we are just burning money because we do not actually have a lot of equity, obviously.
Definitely not. So, okay, so I do just call.
Okay.
And so we're looking at now about 90 in the pot.
Yep.
And the turn rolls off a really interesting card. It's the 9 of hearts.
Okay.
So that, of course, brings in queen 10.
And it gives us a double gutter.
Gives us double gutter. It brings in queen 10, brings in 10-7, brings in 7-6.
Yep.
It's just an awesome card for our range, is how I would describe it.
Okay.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's probably better for our range. Although I do think Villain has pretty much all those hands that you just described. I think Villain has all the queen 10, has 6-7. Where we're definitely advantaged in terms of hands like Jack 9 and 9-8.
And pocket nines too.
Yeah, pocket nines, because Villain's probably checking back. And the reason I say we are advantaged in this spot for our listeners is because Villain is likely to be checking back a lot of these hands that have some showdown value, especially given Villain took a larger flop sizing and is a competent thinking player. Then when he takes a larger sizing, that means he is likely betting less. So a lot of his hands that interact with this 9, in terms of making pairs or sets or two pairs, will likely have checked back the flop, whereas we can do a lot of calling with hands like pocket 9s. Although we might also 3-bet pocket 9s pre-flop button versus big blind.
Sometimes, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I'm happy to start playing it a bit more aggressively here. We can probably lead on this card or go for a check raise.
We do go ahead and lead. I think this card's going to be checked back a lot. We go ahead and lead for $40. I don't know if that's the right sizing. Maybe I'm supposed to be a titch smaller.
I don't really know lead sizings, so yeah, looks good to me.
Looks great, dude. Yeah, I think you're only supposed to take. I mean, there's probably not much difference between 30 and 40, to tell you the truth. But I do think the spots where you're supposed to lead very large are pretty few and far between. But it's where you just have a big nut advantage as the out of position check caller, which this isn't one of those boards because Villain, of course, as we said, can't have straights here.
I think it's kind of interesting. I don't really know the theory, and my intuition is probably wrong here, but I almost feel like we might want to do more check raising than leading as we get deeper, because if we have a leading range, if we have hands that lead that want to play for stacks, that's just going to be very difficult via leading. I don't know. Maybe that's just kind of a thought that I had. I don't know that it's right or in any way supported by theory.
I feel like, given how deep we are, Villain is supposed to check back this board a lot more, though.
Right. I mean, that's certainly true as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Probably if Villain does bet this board, they're supposed to use a very large sizing, and I don't know how much check raising I want to do versus a massive, if he bets 80 here, it's ugh.
Right.
So,
okay,
yeah.
I mean, that's a good point, too. So
Yeah.
good. I mean, playing out of position sucks, right? It just always comes back to being out of position is brutal, and it gets brutaler the deeper we get.
Yeah. So I felt okay about my decision to lead here. This is not again where the hand for me is just like I have no idea. I feel like this was kind of the right way to go.
Okay.
And villain thinks for a bit and does flick in a call.
Okay. Cool.
The river is where, like, man, I don't know.
I was hoping so, because I think the river can definitely be very interesting here. So what does it peel off?
The river is the 9 of clubs.
Okay.
So pairs the 9, which takes away my sets of 9s that I can have that I have led with.
Right.
Or some of my 2 pairs that I could have led with.
Right.
And it's a club completing. It completes the club draw. And I don't know that I'm leading with that many club draws. Maybe I am supposed to. In the time, I was thinking like most of the hands I would lead with that are draws are more likely to be straight draws than flush draws, I think.
I think this is, I mean, right, it's one of these things where if we have a leading range, and this is one of the reasons why I haven't implemented it a lot, is because I feel like you should probably be sure of like what you want to put in a leading range versus a check raising range. You know, like maybe, you know, if it's a card that's like that's like that you just expect your opponent to check back all that, like so often, like you just want to not really have a check raising range and plan on like doing a lot of leading, you know, and have a pretty slim check raising range at least. And I don't really know what that means, you know, how to actually balance that and like how to do it properly. This is a super interesting card, I agree, because it's like, you know, I do think we would want to keep leading on a lot of club rivers. And I would say, I think if we lead with King 7 off with like the King of Clubs, as you noted on the flop, it's like we have to play this hand aggressively. You know, the whole point of check calling flop is so we can play aggressively on future streets. And so having the King of Clubs means we probably would want to continue on most club rivers. I don't know about this one.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, we block a club. We have a high club, so that's
which
good.
Is great.
Block our from having clubs. But on the flip side, you know, I guess a few things on the flip side. First of all, we have to have some give ups.
Yeah.
Like stone cold, we have to have some give ups. Like it's important, and they have to be a decent chunk of our range. We can't just be giving up like 2 hands here. We have to have a good amount of give ups. And you know, I was trying to structure here so that I would have enough bluffs I would arrive at the river with enough bluffs that I could have a decent chunk of give ups and a decent chunk of continues. And typically it's bad to use busted draws to barrel the river as a general rule, because you block your opponent from having a busted draw.
Right.
Now, this may be a slightly different scenario where like a very big draw does complete that we block. I don't know.
Right, because we don't really, and I was just thinking about this also when you kind of said how many flush draws would you want to lead with. I do think you have to lead the turn with flush draws because we want to bluff with a hand like this on most club rivers. Right? So I think we need to have some flushes also if we're going to have some like flush blockers. That kind of go like lead.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think this is pretty interesting because I totally agree. We're not supposed to have a lot of busted draws, but like there aren't really any. Like 10x is like the only busted draw.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously busted our double gutter, but you mean that
sure.
That villain you can have, you're saying.
Right, 10x and 7x, I guess, would be the two.
Yeah.
And so the question is what do we I see your point. It's like what do we want to keep bluffing with on the river? You know, it's a single race pot, it's button versus big blind, ranges are wide. You know, do we want to kind of structure our bluffs to be about like boat blockers? Do we want to have flush blockers? You know, if we have a hand like King 5 with the King of Clubs, is that like a better hand to bluff with because we block some boats?
Right, absolutely. I think that's an option. I mean, what's our thick value? I mean, we have, I guess, some flushes here. To your point, we should anyway have some flushes. We probably have some boats like 5s and 8s would be our boats, probably.
Possibly 9-8, Jack-9 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 9-8 and Jack-9 if we're leading those hands.
Yeah, that's actually like a decent number of boats.
Although it's worth noting, to your point about having check raising, having some check raising hands on the turn, having like Jack-9 and Jack-9 specifically is probably a good check raising hand on the turn because like it blocks top pairs. It might be worse leading.
No, I think you want to have it as. I think for check raising you don't want to block top pair. I think because you want them to continue with a hand like top pair when you have value. Like when you're check raising for value, I think it's better to unblock top pair. So
right.
But I think we can have like a decent number of boats here. We should also have a decent number of flushes here.
Yeah.
And our villain can have probably very few boats as played.
I don't know.
They just call our turn lead. How many boats do they show up with here?
I mean, I think they can. I think they can in position. They probably can just call some sets.
Yeah, but they're going to raise some. I think that villain is going to have a lot fewer boats than us here.
Sure.
Flushes, I actually think villain can have as many as we can.
Right. Okay.
Right. So I guess it's more important.
Well, I guess it depends on what his raising range is pre-flop too, right? And what our defending range is. Because it's kind of I don't even know theoretically whether they raise more suited hands or we defend more suited hands. It might be pretty close.
Yeah. I mean, well, we think about what the distribution of clubs are. See, this is like I think this is like such a nerdy hand. It's like, let's think about like the distribution of clubs. It's like there aren't that many high clubs, so he should have more flushes than me, I think.
Right.
So I guess we have two sides. I think we need to have a split sizing here, first of all. So I think that we have probably a like a small sizing, which probably isn't that small. It's probably not a blocky size. It's probably like a 2/3 to 3/4 type of size that we would take with made flushes. And then we may have either an overbet, like a 1.5x type of overbet, or possibly a shove range with boats.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's either I think we're supposed to overbet boats here because we have much more boats than villain, especially when we have a boat. They're almost never gonna have one. So like it's just jacks basically at that point, which again they will be raising on turn sometimes. So I think that I think we can take I think we can overbet boats, and I think we can take like a 3/4, 2/3 sizing with made flushes. Are you on board with that?
Yeah. Okay.
So then we think about this hand's going to this hand does not block any boats; it just blocks flushes. So if we were going to bluff with it, we would take like a 3/4 type of sizing. It's like, what better flush blocky type hands do we even have though? That's like ace-x, right? Ace-x.
Right, ace-x with the ace of clubs. And again, maybe like having like this, and I guess the 7 is pretty okay, but maybe having the 7 be like a 10 or a queen to block the higher straight would be a little bit better.
Yeah, I think if we have no club, we just give up here.
Yeah.
And we can have a decent amount of no clubs, to be honest. So maybe this is a barrel. Maybe we're supposed to go for like,
I don't know, what no club, like what nothing burgers do we lead the turn with? Like what kind of hands are you thinking that we
have? Maybe king 10 without a club.
It just picks up a gutter, possibly.
King 7 without a club.
It's just like a lot of the 10x is like either paired up or not, or we don't have it. So it's interesting. Like king, it's pretty much like this kind of just king 10 off without a club. So maybe we do need more give ups.
It's king 10 off without a club and king 7 off without a club. Right. Both.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if that's enough give ups.
Yeah. So we need more give ups. But like we block a high club here. Like king 7 where the 7 is a club is a better give up.
Sure. No, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess because villain, as you said, there are a lot of sort of basically most of the Broadway clubs are unaccounted for, so holding one is does reduce the number of flushes that our opponent has by a pretty good margin. So sure, I can get on board with turning this hand into a bluff and continuing on the river.
Yeah, especially because we're taking a smaller size, so we don't have to have as many give ups. Is another point.
Right.
So.
I mean, it's still a pretty. I mean, yes, but it's not a small sizing.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's
bet like, I mean, we're looking what the pot's like 170, so I think we could bet like 120 here.
It's also interesting because I feel like for the overbetting sizing, like a lot of our bluffs can be like hands that we led for value on the turn, like 8-5 and Jack-5 and Jack-8. Like maybe we can bluff those hands.
Interesting.
Because like we want boat blocker. Like if we're overbetting and our value is boats, then we probably want to have boat blockers. And so having a hand like 8-5 is probably the best bluff we can have. There's not a lot of combos of that, so we need more.
Yeah, for sure. So
it's weird. We really have to structure the turn lead correctly.
Yeah. So I think ultimately though, this is a good candidate to turn into a bluff. I think it's probably an okay give up too.
I think that's probably fair. And again, I think this is just one area where poker is hard. Because it's like
hard.
When you lead when you lead turn, you just need to know what your lead and this kind of makes me realize that I need to do more this is where you really need to study. Because it's like I definitely, I'm sure if you've listened to Bankroll Burners for a long time, you know that we both often make a play and then on the next street be like, wow, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And this is a spot where knowing the range with which you do something on one street, if you know that, then you should be able to segment into what you're supposed to do on the next street. So if we knew our whole turn leading range, then we could probably look at the exact number of combos that we have of each hand and figure out where this hand is. But as is, it's probably okay either way.
Okay either way. So yeah, I think this is fine. I don't feel too bad about my give up.
So do we decide to check in the end?
We do give up and check. Villain quickly checks back and says, "I'm so glad you didn't bet," and rolls over ace of diamonds, jack of spades.
Okay.
So definitely a hand. I think we could get some folds from if we had chunked it here.
Yeah, and maybe I do. It's to your point. Opponent's range is like kind of capped, although they definitely do have some flushes at this point. But maybe with the king of clubs, maybe we do have enough. Maybe we do have enough worse hands. Like where we're holding sort of a low club as part. That we have like a gutter and a low club that we can give up with, and so maybe this just turns into like a pure bet. I think your analysis there was really good.
All right, a great analysis and terrible play. Welcome to Bankroll Burners, ladies and gentlemen.
If you want someone to talk about the theory of poker while applying it poorly, look no further.
Oh my God. All right, let's take us home, Josh.
All right, last hand. I think this one's actually a super interesting one too. So, man, sorry everyone for running long. We're going to be just killing you with analysis here. Just what everybody wants. Well, in this hand, this is actually going to be the same villain as the small blind from the last hand. So the small blind, you may recall, wound up with pocket jacks in the small blind and totally owned our soul as they got an extra bet out of us. We're going to be 550 effective in this hand.
I see the night's been going well.
I actually think this was... I don't even remember when this was. This might have been before the last hand. I really don't remember. Probably not, because I did book a loss in that session. So, in this hand, that player from middle position opens to 15. Mm-hmm. Hero is on the button with king, queen of spades, and I decide to 3-bet up to 50.
Fairly standard. I like it.
I've been trying to play a little bit more aggressively pre-flop, especially from in position, after realizing that I sometimes play more aggressively from out of position, and that's like, yeah, it's one of these things where I think in previous episodes, obviously you can call on the button a lot, but also like if you're gonna play 3-bet or fold from the small blind, then we should probably do a fair amount of 3-betting from the button, just because the button is better than the small blind.
And here you're in the cutoff, you said?
I'm on the button.
You are on the button. Yeah, I mean, I think this.
Yeah, of course I'm pretty much pure 3-betting king queen suited, so. Um, and then only the original opener calls.
Cool. So you got 100 in the middle, about 500 behind. 5x.
Exactly.
Should be fairly easy to get stacks in if you want to.
Yes, exactly. And the flop is now going to come out 5 of clubs, 4 of clubs, deuce of diamonds.
And you have king, queen of spades.
Correct.
That's a lame flop.
It is. And the middle position player checks.
Well, so I guess the first thing we have to ask is, like, what does your whole range do on this board? And this is really something that, if we spent more time with the solver, we would know the answer to. But I don't know the answer. Do you happen to know the answer, Josh?
I don't. I meant to run this hand through the solver, but I haven't. But I was kind of thinking about, this board and kind of thinking, well, neither of us should really have sets. I should probably have more straights. And neither of us, and it's really one combo. It's just ace three. I mean, not one combo. It's just the ace three suiteds, which I think I should have more of because
you shouldn't have much.
But I shouldn't have much.
I think neither of you should have a set or a straight on this board, like, most of the time.
So I basically decide, given how strong my range advantage is on this board, I should probably be doing a lot of betting. I should be doing a lot of betting for a pretty chunky sizing.
I think that's fair. I do think you are allowed to have some checkbacks here, probably.
Yep.
And your hand is actually probably a bad candidate. I'm thinking about it. It's not a great candidate to check back because you really have very little showdown value. You're losing to random ace-x. Although the problem is on this board, though, all the ace-x is going to call you.
Well, the interesting thing that I guess I was thinking about is not from an ace-x perspective, but more of like if I'm against sort of an overpair. Like, let's say queens or jacks through sevens, probably, sure. Right? Then I'd rather bluff with this hand than like a suited connector because I want to have more equity. And like this hand, if I hit top pair on a future street, I'm more likely good.
Yeah, that's true. I think the issue is, though, I mean, if you have an ace-x type of holding here, first of all, you have more equity because you have a gutter, but you're also blocking your opponent from just like all the ace-x that really is going to call you on this board. I mean, they're just going to call you with ace-high all day because they have a gutter. So
I mean it's kind of an interesting spot where, the line I guess I was thinking about taking is probably bet flop pretty big, check back a lot of turns, like a lot of brick turns with this particular combo, and then like barrel river if checked to again. Just to kind of, because like I recognize we're not good against ace high. I recognize ace high is going to call the flop, but I do think we have, ways we can use our position and like realize a lot of equity and kind of turn it aggressively as needed.
Yeah, I think that line will clean up the ace highs, so that's good. Although I do wonder, is that line going to work against sixes, sevens, eights?
Yeah, I don't know.
A lot of them are going to be inclined to call. I mean, depends on the run out too. Like if they get more overcards to their pair, it's going to be uncomfortable. So, okay.
But maybe we can check this back. I mean, it's like we probably would rather be bluffing with a lot of ace high type hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we check this back, it is very hard to win on later streets. So
right. Unless we hit a king or a queen, basically.
Versus with like, an ace high type of hand to check back, like. I mean, I don't know. I actually really don't know, but I don't think it can be that bad to bet this. Like, so okay, what sizing do you take?
So I bet 60 because I think I want to go on the larger side, but it's a 3-bet pot and stacks are reasonably shallow, so I don't think we need to like size up all that much.
Yeah, I would probably go like half pot here. Yeah. So I got to touch smaller because there's a flush draw out there as well. So.
Yeah. Well, I bet 60. I mean, I was kind of thinking, my heart was in the right place. My spades were in the right place.
As Bart Hansen says when he's trying to be nice, it's a subtle thing.
Yeah, that is true. At least I'm not out to lunch.
Exactly. At least you're not out to lunch.
Villain calls pretty quickly. So we're up to about 220 in the pot and about 440 behind. So exactly 2 SPR, more or less. Exactly, more or less. You'll love to see it. And the turn is a very interesting card. It's the 3 of clubs. So the board is now 5 of clubs, 4 of clubs, deuce of diamonds, 3 of clubs, and villain checks.
Seems like you should check back to me. It seems like you cannot win this hand. That's what it seems like to me.
But like, what are my bluffs here?
Probably hands that contain a club.
Right, but I don't know. So like king, but like, what hands do I have that contain a club? Like, I don't know. Like, am I bluffing? Am I turning?
Probably if you're three betting a lot of offsuit broadways,
Which I don't think I should be, by the way, because that don't contain an ace. I don't really think I should be because it was a pretty early position raise. I don't know that I should. I don't think that I should be three betting a lot of like king jack off. I guess king queen off. I probably three bet sometimes.
That's not enough bluffs though, obviously.
So I don't really know because this is such a weird. This is like a weird card. I was like, I feel like I should have more aces, more ace X. I feel like I should have more ace X. I don't know that I don't really think club. Either of us should really have a lot of credit for flushes here. So
I think both of you can have some flushes.
Yeah, I mean that's true. Of course, that's true. We probably both have some flushes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. Like, what are the?
So I would just like kind of
have something like a 7-8 type of hand. That still has a gutter ball. Could be fine. Maybe something like.
I guess my thought in the moment was basically like, well, this hand actually functions pretty well as a bluff because I block all the a lot of my opponent's my opponent's aces, basically. Like, if I have a hand like 8-7, I do have more equity. Although, yeah, I mean, I do have more equity. But I also
not have a king because your opponent shouldn't have much ace king, but should have more.
My opponent will absolutely have a ton of ace king. This is live poker, Mike.
No, yeah, fair enough. But they'll have more ace queen and ace jack than ace king.
Yeah, so maybe queen jack is better.
Yeah,
if we're gonna do it.
Yeah, queen jack suited, jack 10 suited.
I don't think my opponent will have a lot of ace jack. Definitely not ace jack offsuit. I don't think.
Yeah, that's fair.
Probably not. So I don't know. That's kind of why I thought, my opponent's ace X's that are unsuited are basically like ace king and ace queen. So maybe I should just, use that. But obviously, I do agree with you. I think king queen off with the king of clubs or the queen of clubs is probably
better.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because those hands almost want to check back and realize their equity. You don't really want to get blown off your equity by a check raise, too. Do you think this is a board? Like, I feel like this is a board where we get check raised a lot by value.
But I don't know if you have that much equity with queen jack off, really, because if you make a flush on the river, it really may not be good. So
right, that's true. That's true.
So
we're just, yeah, that's a good point.
It's definitely interesting. I do see you're saying you have a lot of bets for value here. It sounds like, although maybe you're not supposed to bet that many ace X here. Maybe you're supposed to check back a decent amount of ace X.
That could be just because it's
it's really hard to get value from worse.
Right. I mean, I guess you'd be targeting overpairs basically, right? And then you just want to put them in a crappy spot.
I actually you could bet really small to try to target overpairs, but what sizing would you want to take on the turn with your flushes? Probably you want to take a larger sizing to put ace X in a crappy spot.
Sure.
Because they'll probably be forced to continue at least once with the ace X type of holding. So I think what sizing do you want to take on this turn? It's probably large but not overbet.
Don't you think we probably want to go geometric here?
Oh sure, yeah.
Which would be I think 60% ish.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if
I don't know. Maybe do we want to shove here? Do we want a shove sizing here? No, seems questionable.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think taking
But then do we just want to bet that size with our whole range, a geometric size with our whole range?
Yeah, well, I think you probably only have one size. I mean, we try to only have one size in the turn. I think a geometric size here is fine.
And then do we bet ace X for that size?
Right.
Because if we do, then we probably do need a lot of bluffs.
I don't think you should, to be honest.
Right.
I think you should check back ace-x because it's just so much harder to get value from worse. So, and you're also, if you get check raised, like, it's horrible.
I don't really think so. I think if you got check raised, you just stack off with ace-x. Like, I don't know. I don't think that. I just don't think either player has that many flushes.
Yeah, that's true. But,
so I don't know. It's like I don't know. This is just like a weird.
You can just stack off with ace-x, but maybe like it would be better if you could avoid doing so. Because like you don't really want to stack off with ace-x. That's sort of my point. It's like if you get check raised, like yes, maybe you are forced to call, but like your preference here with ace-x is to not play for stacks. I think.
Right. It's very interesting because I was kind of thinking about like more like especially because and maybe this was a little bit too much of sort of live thinking of like my opponent is like very heavy on like just has a lot of pairs here. Like live players love pairs.
But I think they'll fold a pair on the river. If you had ace-x here and you check it back, but then you blast river with it. If you're a checked 2 on river and you blast, I think you'll get. Well, first you're gonna put pairs. Actually, sorry, you'll put pairs in a tougher spot, I guess.
You think? But I thought that like. Then wouldn't we want to go geometric and put them in the hardest spot by the river? Like force them to call down wide? Isn't that like the point of geometric sizing?
The point of geometric sizing is when you are wanting to play for stacks, though, which I don't know that this holding does, ultimately.
But so you don't like that's kind of the. I think that's the question.
I don't know that an ace-x holding does. Is what I meant.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
I don't know. This is a hard one.
Yeah, I don't know either because I was thinking in the moment ace-x wants to just like go bet here, and so I should do that with this hand because I'm going to need a lot of bluffs, and I just want to put his overpairs into a very difficult spot.
I mean, you started this hand almost 200 big blinds effective. It's not crazy to not want to play for stacks with the non-nut straight.
But there's no sixes. What sixes do either of us have here? Like it's a 3-bet pot.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Like six, like some small amount of like he can have some sixes. I can have some 6-7, and like.
Yeah, I don't know. So maybe you do want to play for stacks with ace-x, in which case, sure. I mean, I guess this hand's fine.
I don't know. I really don't. Like, this is kind of why I was so confused. I was like, basically, I was like, and maybe king, like, the other thing about king-queen is, like, it does unblock the pairs that I want to fold by the river.
Yeah. So okay.
So I don't know. I decided to bet. This is where I'm sure you knew this is where this was going.
Yeah,
I bet 125, which
it's pretty close.
I think is, it's what did you just say? It's a subtle. It's a subtle thing.
Subtle thing. Yeah, you're good. Okay.
And he calls pretty quickly.
He folds.
No, he calls.
Oh, he calls. Okay.
Yeah, pretty quickly.
All right.
So there's 370 in. No, there's 470 in, and there's like, there's 470 in, and there's like 315 remaining. And the river is just the most anticlimactic ace of hearts you ever did see. And he checks, and I decide that this is a great time to check back because I don't think my hand is like a good, like makes any sense to bluff at this point.
Yep, agreed.
And he shows pocket jacks with the jack of clubs.
Yeah, interesting.
So, I don't know. It was like this is a very weird one. And I guess like something we didn't talk about is like any sort of overpair with a club is probably forced to call turn and fold river if they don't improve. Or like call turn and be put in a difficult spot on the river. So I don't know if that weights anything one way or another.
Yeah, it's hard. I agree that it's better to unblock the lower pairs. So maybe let me ask you this: if the river had been a brick, like an 8 of hearts, probably
would have ripped it.
You would have ripped it. You think you have a good candidate for like a river rip?
I guess thinking about it now, I could justify it. But I guess my bigger thought is like I just think I have a lot of ace X that wants to do that.
Okay.
And so I just need like a lot of like I just think I have more aces, but I don't know. Maybe that's just wrong. And maybe aces don't want to play for stacks.
I think this would be a very interesting hand to solve. So maybe we will solve and report back next time.
You don't think we solved it there?
I don't think we solved it, Josh. We've never solved anything in our lives.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. This was just a bizarre one. This is a bizarre episode, everyone. We just got put in many tough spots and probably played them all wrong.
Probably played them all wrong, and it's probably all our own faults for getting into those spots in the first place.
Yeah, that could be.
Well, thanks everyone for sticking around, listening to us prattle on. We really appreciate it as always. Leave a comment, let us know what you think, and we'll see you next week.
Appreciate you all.